Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. And after yesterday's video where I did a really precise deep dive into the current salary cap situation for the Seahawks, I thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at the 2024 Seahawks, the future Seahawks. How are they doing with cap space? How are they doing with the money? Because over the last few days, and really you could go back to earlier in the off season and maybe even the previous off season, way back in 2022, the team has really started to commit to a pretty decent chunk of what we currently have. And I kind of want to stop and take measure of where the Seahawks sit going into 2024. And I know there are going to be some people out there who are thinking along the lines of, well, we got the whole 2023 season to get through first. Why are we talking about 2024? But I want to take a look at how the moves this team has made has set us up for the long term, or at least the semi long term, after looking at the short term, which is the right now. And one reason why I want to do this is I want to kind of highlight a couple things that are happening with this roster going into 2024. We actually have more cap liabilities in 2024 right now than we do in 2023. I'm on overthecap.com, which I believe is updated 1000% to what is current in terms of Seahawks spending. And they have us at 257,650,000 in cap liabilities, which is more than we have this year. And obviously, the reason why that is, it's pretty obvious. We have a bunch of salaries that are ballooning in 2024 from 2023, but usually that's offset by all the guys who are coming off the books, and we don't have that. We really don't. If you take a look at our top 51, you can see that we're pretty close to capped out. Like, actually, not that this number is necessarily going to be accurate because we don't even know what the cap space is going to be. They have us at less than 3 million cap space as is. So I want to take a look at this because obviously this number won't be that meaningful. We're going to release some players. We're going to find ways to clear cap space. There are going to be things that you can do. There always are. But I want to take a look at the semi long term possibilities for this Seahawks roster because we're not completely committed, but we are pretty committed to a team very similar to the team that we have right now. All right, so looking at the 2024 books, Jamal Adams, his current cap number for next year is 23.6 million. Now, I think that unless Jamal has a very good year, this is probably the end of the line for him, and I think most people would agree with that. At a certain point, especially if he misses a bunch of games or doesn't look like an all-pro, it's not like you save a ton of money. You do save some, but at a certain point, you just kind of want to cut your losses because it's been such a, I don't want to call it a complete disaster, but it's been at least a semi disaster. It's been in the realm of a disaster. And at a certain point, you kind of just want to move on, maybe. So you can release Jamal Adams. You're still going to owe him 14.2 million, but you're going to save about 9.4 million. If you do the post June 1st cut, it gets even better. You can release him, only give him 7 million dead, 7.1, and then you save 16.5. Of course, that means you're making your books even harder to manage in 2025, but that might be something that you're willing to do. So that's the big one. DK Metcalf has a $24.5 million cap hit that cannot really be gotten out of. The dead money on releasing Metcalf or trading him would be almost that much, 23 million. And this is going to be kind of the year where the DK Metcalf cap hit kind of starts to really impact things a little bit. Like this year, the cap hit's significant, but it's really not, it's not anything that you wouldn't expect for a guy of that caliber. But next year, it's starting to balloon, and it might be ballooning at a rate that is even faster than the cap. So this is going to be kind of the big oof year for the DK Metcalf contract. Hopefully he can live up to it. So far in his career, he's done nothing but live up to expectations, I think. So I'm not too worried about it, but it's a big cap hit. Quandre Diggs, this is the reaction to what Quandre Diggs did with his contract last week, restructuring it. The cap hit for 2024 now goes up significantly to 21.2 million, actually 21 and a quarter million. You can release him. You can release him and save 11 million, but you're increasing the dead cap hit now to over 10 million. So that's going to be another punch either way. Either you're paying Quandre Diggs 21 and a quarter million, or you're taking the 10 and a quarter million dead to just not have him on the roster. And then you've got Tyler Lockett. His cap hit balloons up to 27 million almost. You could release him, but I just, I don't know. It's hard for me to see us doing anything like that to Lockett unless he really falls off hard this season. So I don't think that's in the cards. You could restructure Lockett again and get this cap hit down, but that's just going to make the cap hit in 2025 massive. You could make him a post-June 1st release, I guess, and you would save a pretty decent amount of money, but that would just spread out the pain a little bit more. And then you've got Geno Smith here, 31 million. He's another guy who you could theoretically release, but I think you would only do that if he has a really bad year, because you're looking at paying him 17.4 million dead. You could cut that in half by making him a post-June 1st cut, but again, you're spreading out the pain. I think you would only be willing to do that if he plays poorly. And for reasons I've gone over in the past, there's no reason for Geno to play poorly. He is in a very good situation right now with the receivers, tight ends, running backs, and offensive coordinator he has. So 31.2 million, you can kind of see how these numbers are really starting to have an impact. It feels like half your space is gone just on your top 5 players. And again, I expect Jamal to be released, but that's still a big chunk of the cap going his way, whether you have him on the team or not. So you're kind of committed here, because these other guys, it's like, yeah, we could talk about an exit strategy, but for all these guys, even Jamal Adams, I'll put Jamal Adams in there as well. I don't think you move on from them unless they give you a reason to with their play. And Jamal may very well do that just by missing 7-8 games, which seems unfortunately tragically likely. But I don't imagine a future where Lockett gets released and we eat almost 20 million dead unless he just isn't the guy anymore. And then you got Nwosu. His cap hit's only 8.1 million, so that's pretty manageable. But then you got Draymond Jones. His cap hit balloons up to 18.2 million almost, and no real getting out of it unless you want to do a post-June 1st cut. But I'll say it again, not unless he plays badly, probably, right? Will Dissly, $10 million cap hit. This one, I kind of feel like we're going to move off of. We're going to pay the 3.1 dead to save 7 million. So you can start to see where the savings are going to come in, right? You save at least 9.4 million on Jamal Adams. You save 7 million on Will Dissly. And then you start getting into the guys that aren't quite so expensive. Guys like Witherspoon balloon up to 7.2. Cross goes up to just shy of 6. Julian Love goes up to 8, but there's a pretty easy out. You could cut him and sit and only pay him 2.4. You got Brian Monet, but that is, I think, going to be a pretty slam dunk release at this point because he's only due 500K if released. So there's another 5.9 million you can kind of earmark for us having. Dixon, I don't think we release him unless he has a bad season. Myers can't really get out from under that. And then you're kind of getting down to the low guys. Not necessarily low, like there are going to be guys down here that are making practically nothing against the cap, but you're starting to get down to the guys where they're not moving the needle with their salaries one way or the other. Like Jaron Reed, I think, is a pretty easy release. You save $4.5 million almost. Only pay him 1.5 dead, sure, but that's not even going to get you 5 million in savings. JSN's not going anywhere. Maybe Belore, you could save almost 3 million if you release him. But these guys aren't going anywhere. And then you're down to the guys like Eskridge, where the savings are kind of insubstantial. So this roster is kind of, I don't want to call it completely inflexible, but it's getting to the point where you could call it you could at least call it somewhat inflexible at this point. We have a bunch of guys who, yeah, you could release, but it's going to hurt to release them. They're going to have to give you a reason to. And if I had to guess, I would say that Jamal Adams is going to go. I would say Will Dissly is going to go. Julian Love, I think, could go one way or the other. I got no idea there. Depends on how he plays and how much we use him. Brian Monet's a slam dunk. Jaron Reed's kind of a slam dunk, and that's going to help. But you might have to take care of an extension. What if you have to extend a guy like Damian Lewis? That's going to eat up a lot of that. Well, it's going to be a first year extension cap hit, so it's not going to be huge, but it's going to take up some of it because he's not even accounted for on this list. You're probably going to need to bring in at least one more tight end because Noah Fant's not here. Wilt Disley, if I'm right about him getting released, wouldn't be here. So you're going to have to start spending money or draft picks, I guess, on tight ends. And you just do the math and you realize next year is not going to be a year where you can completely remake the roster. You are kind of committed to a lot of these guys. A lot of the big money guys on this roster are you're committed to, and the thing is, this is going to be one of those years where we don't have a lot of big salaries coming off the books like you will often see in these situations. Like for some teams, you will see guys making a ton of money one year, and then the next year they're just off the books and you don't have to worry about it anymore. We don't really have those guys right now. Those guys, like Nwosu was going to be that guy, but he got extended, which, hey, great extension. I got no problem with it, but it's going to be a cap hit that you now have to account for in the future as well. And you can kind of see how there really won't be a lot of money to go around because we have our full allotment of draft picks next year. We need money to pay rookies. We're going to need money to. There might be another surprise extension somewhere in here that we're not even thinking about right now. So you look ahead to 2024, you can see that this team really needs the players that they have on the team right now to come through if this team wants to get to where they want to go.